grade. So I hope that you are excited to be here for another social studies lesson. Several of you said last week that you really enjoyed the social studies lessons that we've been doing, and I really enjoy getting to see your discussions and your comments. So I'm excited that we're doing this again this week. So if you already watched the 3 branches of government video, you already have a pretty good idea of what the 3 branches of government are. But we are also going to read an article that has to do with the 3 branches of government, and we're going to read it together today, and that's all we're really going to do today. And then we are going to reread it tomorrow and do some markups and things like that. So for today, all we're doing is we're just reading this article. So for this article, we have the Constitution. And if you remember, the Constitution was what we talked about last week, and it gave us a lot of rules and laws to live by, and it helped us to create our government. And so here we have the 3 branches. And, I like to think of the 3 branches. Branch, where have you heard that before? So think about where you've heard the word branches. So you may have heard it outside, something really big, has leaves. A tree. You might think of branches with a tree, and that's kind of the way that this works. So if you think about a tree, and it has one trunk, and then it goes up into lots of branches, and they all are still part of the same trunk and the same tree, right? Well, that's kind of how this 3 branches of government works. There are 3 separate sections, but they all are part of the same government, the United States government. So we have the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And the legislative is typically held in the U.S. Capitol. The White House is the home of the executive branch. And then the Supreme Court is where the judicial branch, does all of their work. So the legislative branch is further split up into 2 sections, 2 little twigs, if we're talking about trees, which is the House of Representatives and the Senate. The executive, if you remember, I talked a little bit about this in my KWL chart. I talked about how I knew that the president was part of the executive branch. This also shows us that the vice president is part of the executive branch. And then we have the judicial system, which we have the Supreme Court. So once again, I know that you already learned a bunch about this in that other video, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your responses to those questions that were set up throughout the video, but we're going to read this article together. So the United States Constitution was written over 200 years ago. It explains how the United States government should work. The people who wrote the Constitution did not want one person or group to have too much power. That was why they divided the government into 3 parts known as branches. So I want you to think a little bit about that paragraph. Think about, why do you think that they wouldn't want one person to have too much power? So think about that. I am going to put a question out there tomorrow, and I want you to kind of think about, why would that be a bad thing? Why would that not be a very good thing? So then we have the branches are the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. Each branch has its own responsibilities. The branches work together, but they also check each other to make sure no branch has too much power. The legislative branch includes the United States Congress. Congress is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Voters in each state elect their representation in the House and their senators. Those men and women go to Washington, D.C. to make laws. So once again, I know that it kind of talked a little bit about that in the other video, but all of us can't go to Washington, D.C. to help make laws, right? That would never work. There are way too many of us. And, some of us may not know the first thing about making laws and what it would be good to do. So what we get to do is we get to choose people to go and do that for us. We get to choose people to be our voice and who will speak for us and who will think about us when they're making these laws. So each state gets to elect those people. So Pennsylvania, we have our set of House of Representatives and senators, and we get to do that and vote for that, which is pretty awesome. Okay, so moving on. The executive branch has the power to carry out the laws. It includes the president, the vice president, and their group of advisors called the cabinet. Every 4 years, Americans vote to elect a president and a vice president, which some of you asked some awesome questions even last week about why it's every 4 years, and we'll probably get to talk a little bit more about that. Finally, the judicial branch decides on the meanings of the laws and whether laws break the rules of the Constitution. This branch includes the United States Supreme Court. 9 justices serve in the Supreme Court. The president appoints the justices and the Senate approves them. The justice's job is to decide if the country's laws go against the Constitution. So, basically, this person, the president, is the one who picks these people. However, the Senate also has to approve them, which means that we vote for the senators and we also vote for the president. So we also kind of have a say in who is on the Supreme Court. So let's just quick recap, and we're going to talk about this more tomorrow. So the legislative branch, they make the laws. They're the ones in charge of making the laws. The president, he approves or vetoes those laws, and the executive branch also enforces the laws. So they're the ones kind of in charge of, enforcing that. And then the judicial branch, they're in charge of making sure that our laws are fair and that they're constitutional, that they match the Constitution. So that is our 3 branches of government. So I hope that you enjoyed reading this article with me. I enjoyed reading it with you, and we are going to talk a lot more about it tomorrow. So thanks, 3rd grade. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.